Welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. Can suppliers of popular weight loss drugs keep up with the demand from the public? My next guest has more on the mixed messages of a shortage. And joining us on The Factor Uncensored tonight, we have Dr. Danish Ali from Archpoint Pain Institute. Dr. Ali, do we or don't we have a significant supply of Wegovy and Ozempic for people who are out there? We're hearing different things from the FDA saying they were running low on semaglutide, I guess an ingredient in that. So can you make sense of it all for us?
Yeah, Isaiah. At this time, the manufacturers have ramped up the amount of medication, specifically the semaglutides, and we are becoming at a point where the FDA is now realizing that it is not as much of in a shortage, and that's why they've asked some of these compounding pharmacies to stop producing the semaglutides, because the manufacturers have gone back to the FDA and say, listen, we know what sort of supply we need to have and what demand there is, and we can match that. And so with the manufacturers going back to the FDA, they have now told them that now we have enough supply of this medication. The FDA is now going back to the compounding pharmacies and saying, over the course of the next few weeks, you guys need to stop manufacturing and producing semaglutides and whatnot.
Now, the downside to that, Dr. Ali, and you and I both talked about this in the past, the compounding pharmacies out there where they make them there at their stores. The downside is it won't be so cheap if you're not using the compound pharmacist, right?
That's correct, Isaiah. So it goes both ways, and there are concerns with compounding pharmacies as well, Isaiah. The reason is because those are not FDA regulated. They're copycats of the actual version that was studied and researched by the FDA. And so there are concerns about it, and there may be some dosages concerns as well. So FDA takes that into account when they are allowing compounding pharmacies to produce these sorts of medications. And what happens is that once those medications are at a certain point or a certain threshold where they're considered not to be in short supply, then at that time the FDA cuts off the compounding pharmacies and says no more.
Okay, so that's totally it for the compounding pharmacies that are out there. You have to buy the name brand now.
That's correct. Yeah, over the course of the next 2 months, they haven't said, hey, you're cut off today. They're giving, depending on who manufactures those, and that's all available online readily to see, if it's a state-endorsed compound pharmacy versus if it's your local pharmacy or compounding pharmacy. So that information's there. They're not cutting it off immediately. It'll happen in the course of the next 2 months, that they'll have regulations where they have to, depending on which category they fall into, they'll have to stop producing semaglutide.
And of course, we're talking about the drugs that we know by their popular names, Ozempic, Wegovy, some of those that are out there that many people initially they were using for diabetes. Now they're using it for weight loss. Any concerns about the continued use of these drugs by the public?
Yeah, I'd say right now, they've developed a lot of publicity over the course of the last few years. And so a lot of research is going to continue to come out to see, we are seeing some side effects with it. Some people are taking it to the too much extreme where they're losing too much weight, or they're losing actual skin and body fat that's in excessive amounts. And you have to get this monitored and closely looked at by your doctor, because you don't want to lose too much weight too fast either, and it can cause other complications and issues. And so though it's still new, readily new, the most important message is to continue to talk to your primary care doctor or your provider and say, listen, am I doing this correctly? Am I losing the appropriate amount of weight? Is my diabetes, for example, in better control than it was before? Again, you don't want it to take too much of it or not enough. It needs to be adjusted appropriately. Otherwise, you may have complications and side effects.